the time is now 6:30. I'd like to call the regular Board of Finance meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Don Cavella. Here. Kim Medlin.
Here.
Scott Symes. Here. Tom Sinkowitz. Ted Dumaine is absent. Gary Stallborn.
Here.
Keith Shirley. Here. Matt Ray.
Present.
Jody and Kelly are absent tonight. Becky Hewitt will be filling in for our recording. And Keith, you have voting rights for this meeting. All right. Moving on to acceptance of the minutes from the August 19th, 2020 meeting. Minutes were distributed. Questions, discussion? If not, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstention.
Abstention?
Extension.
Okay. Motion carries. All right, first item under new business, updates on the solar panel project. Now, you probably remember we talked a bit about this at our August meeting over at the high school. I did want to take a moment to share with the board and everyone a statement that was drafted up actually earlier today by our first selectman. I got a chance to look over it, and personally, I am in favor of the statement as it's written, so I wanted to kind of let everybody know, again, where we stand as a town on it, and certainly get questions, concerns, comments from the board members. But again, having it been drafted by Kevin, I concur with it and personally would like to see it move forward. So the statement would read as follows. The town of Plainfield put out a bid request for 3 town-owned buildings to search for a company that would give a kilowatt savings on each building when adding solar panels to each roof. The town chose one company that gave what it considered the best return on saving for the 3 roofs. Since then, there have been changes based on the agreed upon scope of the project, PHS, the high school roof, not being an option to provide solar panels due to the condition of the current roof, and change in savings for Plainfield Central, Plainfield Memorial, that negatively impacted the bottom line for cost savings for the town due to an increase in the kilowatt costs. At this time, the town of Plainfield feels that there is no other avenue to go forward on the remaining portions of the project and would not look to continue with the project at this time. So that's pretty much what I had summarized, I know, in my remarks when we talked about it last time. This project has been delayed over a year, definitely not at all on the timeline it was supposed to. Certainly doesn't help that now we're still dealing with it during COVID when there's lots of restrictions, and still dealing with the issue of being activities in the school now that we're back in the school year. The work on these projects was supposed to get done during the summer, so that activity by the students would not be bothered in any way. So even though they had put out a lot of options, I was on a couple calls with Kevin and Kelly, hearing what other options they were looking for. But even after hearing what their, plan B, plan C, plan D would be, I did not see any other options that I personally would support. In my discussions with Kevin, what I feel is that we need to reassess as far as what direction we go in with this project. It's not to say that, for me personally, that I don't want to see it happen. I mean, I like the idea that we were pursuing ways to try to save money on energy, and solar panels, looking at, in the beginning, looking like it was the best option, ended up not working out for some of the buildings. So one of the things that we could still explore, because it didn't seem to be an option with this particular company forefront, was possibly still solar field panels, which definitely has less complications when it comes to, we got issues with roofs. We know that we need to deal with the issues of the roof certainly in the future. But the benefit is that once they're on the ground, you don't have to worry about it. affecting the roofs. So I personally would like to see if there would be any other companies out there, and actually Gary and I have talked about another company, which he'll probably touch on just briefly, as far as there might be another option, and Fields could possibly be there. And so I would like to certainly look at that, and also probably get some more input from the town, because now having reached this this kind of crossroads, I would be interested in more public opinion personally. So maybe we can look into having a town meeting, even if it has to be on Zoom, but inviting the public. It'd be great to get a turnout like we did at the annual report meeting. That many people tuning into something like this, but that's pretty much where I stand on it. So at this point, I'd like to give the opportunity to board members, if you have questions, comments on this project.
Mr. Chair, is that a draft memo? Is that a final product?
It was a draft.
Right.
Yeah.
I've asked input from, if you don't mind me taking this off.
Yep.
I've asked for input from the chair of finance, also Kelly, also Ken DePietro, the superintendent, and also the chair of the Board of Education. I sent that draft to them asking for their input, any modifications, any rewording, whatever they felt would be appropriate, because if they wanted to still go with this company, I didn't have a strong feeling. I mean, we do. We have an idea where we want to go. But I wanted their input and to know where we would like to stand on this. This is also something I sent to the attorney for the solar, Paul Machad, and we're trying to get an understanding of where we can go to the next step. We know that we can't go to high school. It is really not an option at this point because of the condition of the roof. We also heard, from the last meeting, that there's a section of the gym that has to be fixed before we go forward anyway. So I think it would be prudent for the town of Plainfield to get input from other residents, but also the boards and where we can go for other venues, other ways to actually make savings, to be prudent about it, but just take our time in doing so. So I think at this point, it might be the best thing to do at this point, to say, this is drafted, we can make some modifications to it, but this is what we have given to our attorney, Paul Machad, to then work with how we go to the next steps.
Okay, so this is going to serve Paul Machad, his negotiating with the power providers in this case, or the solar providers?
Well, you got to think of what this really was to begin with. This was an RFP that was put out to different companies to bid on. What I see is that what we're now standing in front of is a totally different set of information. We don't have an option for the high school. We have totally different numbers now coming in for savings, which isn't anywhere what we had before. So is it really viable or not? Mr. Machad has advised us on what ways we could go. I'll be polite, and I'll just say that we're still talking through those issues with them.
Okay, and I guess as far as the next steps are concerned, I trust that the evaluation of the contracts we're already engaged in and what impact that's going to have, that's part of the ongoing discussions?
Absolutely.
Is there any bit of that you can speak to at this moment? Okay.
Other questions or comments from board members?
Well, you're talking about putting the system, say in the high school, on a land-based system. Even if you put it in the solar array in a fixed position, you're only going to get the sun X amount of hours per day. Whereas like something like this system rotates with the sun all day long. So you're going to get the sun until it goes down, basically. So you're going to get the full use of the panels, for the full day. And I was looking at like the PD. Those panels face west. So where do you get it? That's why they're not producing. You only get the sun for a couple hours, maybe. So I mean, that's the chief was right. You should have just ripped them off the roof. Is what you should have done, because they're useless.
We'll work with one issue at a time.
Yeah. But
I
either way, just no matter what, they shouldn't be anywhere near the roof of the high school anyway.
But this
So whatever you do.
this is the type of thought that I really do appreciate, because the idea is to get other ideas of how we can make savings for the town.
Oh, yeah.
And this, if it's cost effective, in other words, if you're doing panel by panel, it's more cost effective to do the straight panels versus the rotating ones. we have to look at that as well, because everything has a dollar value to it.
But you know, in the long run, it's like anything else, you're gonna get what you pay for,
Yep.
you know? So, I mean, you probably end up paying more for this system, I don't know. But, you know, you're gonna get more of a savings too.
I think one of my concerns when this entire operation started was it seemed like the consultation on the benefits of the solar program were coming primarily from a sales perspective, where there wasn't very much independent analysis to teach the nuts and bolts about how solar worked, those technicalities that you've just mentioned. And if they were mentioned, you know, there's still, I think, a conflict of interest when the dealership is presenting the facts about your car, or in this case, when a solar company is telling you about how a solar panel works. Is there any way that we have, or I'll rephrase, have we explored the possibility of finding some sort of independent consultant on this to present us with what the actual savings could be outside of a sales perspective? I don't know if that even is readily available or what the price point would be.
I think that it could be available. I think, though, the most important thing at this point is to get past item 1, this is on your agenda. Once we get past that issue, then we can open up all the other broad spectrum of discussion for what we can do. And talking about different types of entities to give us information, and we can gather that. I think really should be much more time involved in looking at the details than just putting it out to bid. Look, if it's the most beneficial thing to the town of Plainfield is to put something on a roof, and we verified that and confirmed that, that's probably the way we should go. If it's more beneficial to put it out on an array somewhere, or a rotating array, we're going to look at all those things. I think it's most important for us to know it's not a short-term fix or a short-term way of saving money. These things would be up there for a long period of time, like 20 years. So we have to look at that whole length of time that it would service.
Just with respects to the next step, and in particular that draft that the first selectman provided, I just commend you on the due diligence. It seems like it's a statement that's representative of a lot of different boards and officials in the town, having reached out through the Board of Education and through Tom and getting our input tonight. So, I mean, my recommendation, you know, the evidence. We can all see the evidence of where the project stands, and I'm in favor of progressing that draft.
Yeah, I know you and I talked about it. It could actually have swayed either way, and I know that's still in the process right now as far as either the town pulling out of this or possibly the forefront doing it voluntarily. Because I think that based on those meetings that we've had and some of the conversations, I mean, I think they've gotten the picture. I mean, I think they would have understood that by now if we were interested in proceeding, I think we would have pulled the trigger already and probably started. So, I mean, at some point it's got to be done, and so I think that this statement is pretty straightforward.
It's a statement for negotiation, so we can continue the discussion, so we can know how to part. I'll be very blunt, how to part. Because if they can't, and I'll put it with this, if you take the whole 3 projects, the 3 schools, and you take away the high school, shouldn't you think that the dollar value that you'd still be saving on the other two schools would stay the same? I mean, otherwise you're putting all your dollar savings in really into the high school, because the other ones now price range just went up. So I couldn't figure that one out, and that's what really kind of was a big alert. We can't. It's not that we were losing money, but we're not getting the savings that we need to have over a 20-year period. And that's what the entire RFP was this is what we're trying to do. So when they were not willing to come up and keep that number down back to where it was, then we have to talk about what the next step is, and I think we're at that right now.
It also makes it complicated for us because when we're trying to, of course, make a budget and try to forecast of what we're going to see in savings, I mean, that's been tough for the past year. Because I remember at a couple of Board of Finance meetings we were debating as far as what buildings are on and what buildings are actually savings, because like whatever the original date was is completely out of the water, at that point. So we were kind of every so often like checking in and seeing like, so buildings that have panels, are they on? And what are we seeing thus far for savings? Because it's like you can't keep kicking the can down the road and not getting that savings.
I'm just going to put this in a bigger perspective. Our job, not just mine, but our job, that's why I included all the boards and committees, our people to look at this, is to do its best for the town of Plainfield over a long-term period. We're trying to set ourselves up so that we know that we're trying to do the best thing we can. And I just can't do that by myself. That's why I've asked other boards and committees to weigh in on this. But you're right. I mean, look at what we have to do for next year's budget. We're going to have to figure out, we're not going to get the savings from those three buildings. So what do we do to help them to offset their budget pieces? They have to figure out as well. But the long range is, if we do this right, it will help us out for many, many years to come.
I remember Ken, of course, mentioning it quite a few times when doing his summary on the BOE budget, as far as banking on that savings. And clearly, you know, that is not where we were hoping that we would be at this point, as far as the progress of the buildings and getting the panels up.
Although to their credit, Mr. Chair, they did not include the savings in their budget drafting process. So,
But he made, I know, but he was making several mentions of
Right,
it.
there was-
And it was one of those things where I wasn't going to get my hope up because I knew the way things were going. I mean, even a year ago when they did the first delay, you know, on it. So I'm glad that.
the presentation included the savings targets that were quite lofty, given the scope of the project. But they were prudent enough not to bake those savings as an assumption going forward in their budget process. So.
Right. And, you know, we know that, but I know in some people who might have only heard bits and pieces of it from the public, I think some people that I've talked to, that they just assumed, or they thought that they were already seeing, you know, that saving. Clearly not. All right. Any other comments, questions on the solar panel project?
I'm in favor of the LPD price.
Ken, any thoughts on?
I am also in agreement with the statement. The fact that it is, I guess you can consider it a joint statement, you know, between the committees and the boards in town, I think is also important for the people of Plainfield to know that as well. But yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with this.
Also,
Alright. Very good. Moving on to item 2, reviewing the 2020-21 fiscal year budget statement. Did everybody get that? Hopefully everybody got that in the email. Okay, good. And then everybody should have gotten a copy to read tonight of Kelly's summary during the budget statement. Kevin, one of the things that was mentioned on Monday at the selectmen's meeting was about offering, was it quarterly tax payments? Is that what that was?
yeah, so you understand where that came from and why. We're doing ordinance review. The selectmen are required to do ordinance review annually. A lot of ordinances, a lot of them are outdated. But what I did ask each department head, if you were to have an ordinance for your department, or you see something else somewhere else that you'd like to actually make as into an ordinance, what would you do? And I got one back from the tax collector saying, well, I know some towns do quarterly payments instead of biannual. So is that something we can do? Well, I guess that really needs to have more research to it and more, you know, something behind it. I think it would be something, if it was to go forward, you have the option, because some people are tied into their mortgage and that's how it goes. Some mortgages wouldn't be flexible like that, so if it's an option that allows them to do that, something I would consider. But that's where that came from.
Yep.
But if people wanted to pay into a quarterly, couldn't they do that anyway? You know, go and make a payment now and then when it's
Well,
due?
the problem with that is if you see your bill, it says on your bill the date that it's due by. And if anything doesn't come in by that date, then you have a penalty. So we have to make modifications to that to allow that to occur for quarterly payment payments. So yeah, you could pay quarterly, but you have penalties along the way with it, as it stands right now.
Also, it's making me think too, at these times right now that we're with COVID, and a lot of people still struggling locally and being unemployed. I know October 1st is coming up very quickly, and as I remember, so after that, if they're continuing to struggle and not make payments, interest will start accumulating. One thing I was happy to hear, this was actually a couple weeks ago, but it was definitely good news. I think Kevin might have forwarded to me, was from our town clerk, saying that there was funding coming to municipalities when it came to the postage, as well as staffing and other costs associated with the election. Which and I think it came out, actually it was around the time, and it was all the news about the post office and all the complications going on there, and how that was making a lot of people think, well, I mean, this is going to cause a lot of problems. Not only for the post office and handling such a mass amount of ballots, but also towns, trickling down to towns and having to do with it. And of course, that was the first thought that came to my mind, is like, well, because this is not something that we're accustomed to, used to dealing with, I hope this doesn't mean that we're going to have to find some extra money to do it. So at least for the time being, it was nice to see that some funding did come through.
I think the amount was somewhere along the lines of 11,500 total, and that will cover postage. For those who don't know, the first go around for the primary, they had hired a company to actually do the mailings for them, and a lot of those companies around the state of Connecticut failed. That's why Denise Merrill stated that let's do a different way of doing it, and they will have all of the town clerks do the mailings, which is a lot more, covers a lot more work, and therefore they are allowed to hire part-time, get another computer if they need to, and also it covers the cost of postage, we hope. Because if you know the numbers, what happened normally for a regular election of some sort, you would have 6% of the people doing the absentee mailings. This had almost 65%. So if we're going to translate those numbers into a November election, that could cost a lot of money and postage and a lot of work.
Are the extra hours that could be involved with that subject to overtime pay?
Well, if they're going to hire someone part-time, they would do it during the daytime because they can't have access to it later in the evening. I mean, they could, but it's still going to come out of that $1 bucket, 11,500.
Right, it would still hit that account, but
And they're only going to be part-time anyway, so it wouldn't go and be considered an overtime pay.
okay. So in that case, tabulating the ballots, certifying them would in fact be the multi-day process.
A lot of it's really
Past
taking in,
election day.
if you requested to have a ballot be sent home to you,
Yep.
we keep track of that as required by the state. So they're tracking it, and then when it comes back in, they verify that it was actually brought back in. So there's a lot more to it than just that day of the election.
Nothing new on the iPark lot sales.
We had just done a contract signing with the new realtor so that they can go out and market it, and it's a larger realtor company lineup, and they're very aggressive when it comes to marketing, so we're hoping that we get something out of that.
Hey Kevin, what's the chances of in the PD to break out the dispatch and mechanic separately?
We can do that.
Another thing, too, the building inspector, only $38 for vehicle expense in 2 months.
Building inspector supplies and expenses, everything?
No, vehicle expense.
Small parts, one small part had to be fixed. I can ask him to go break stuff if you'd like.
Oh,
Because he's
I'm curious. You're gonna say, no gas? It's a hybrid or what? And on the economic development, who went for,
Kelly,
Kelly's remarks?
the two-pager.
Yeah, I distributed that to members.
Yeah, you'll see that on page 2, it says EDC conference, comprised of the Plainfield Business Association. So there was a conference for that for $100. And they pay $1,000 for Connecticut Main Street Center dues, and that's for $1,000. So that's where that money goes to.
okay, so it's just dues and...
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I saw the same thing for Chamber of Commerce. Use, gone through with that.
No electricity used in animal control?
There's department breakdowns for those, and I don't think those were posted as of yet. And when Kelly gets back, she might even be able to do it from home, some of it, but when she gets back, she'll update those.
And the $8,400 for the pool?
I'll look into that in detail for
I'm
you.
assuming it's not being used,
But I
so...
believe most of that goes to, we have the director of the pool who's actually doing other jobs to help us out around the town hall and also in the rec department.
You're talking about pool operation.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're still running electricity to run through and circulate the pool itself right now.
But of course, we have no idea as far as when that's going to be.
Correct. We were under the guidance of the state of Connecticut COVID-19. According to their formula, 5 people can go into the pool, 2 lifeguards, and 1 person outside to do contact tracing. So it's not cost effective to run it full bore like that to 5 people. Because here's a big problem, and I've had I'll say a mild discussion with one person who says, well, why don't you just open it for 5 people anyway? Well, because the problem is you've got 45 people, maybe 50 people that will actually put in their dues for the quarter. Which 5 are going to use it? And then that person argued with me saying, well, just rotate it. I said, well, again, there's 45, 50 people who use it, and you rotate it, they get to use it maybe once a month. Is that fair? For the money that they usually use it for on a regular basis? So it's not, and not to mention the fact that, again, we're going right back to the base of this. It's not cost effective if you've got a lot less people who are going to pay in their dues, and we're still to pay out the same amount of money.
Any search on the EDC director or whatever?
I have not done that as of yet. I also have been wrapping my head around putting that as an EDC/grant writer. So I've gotten from other towns, municipalities, their job descriptions and what the functionality is. I've had a couple of questions. I've had to call back a couple of towns on as to how that really runs, who does what. So that I'm still drafting that final piece together, and it will go out. The good thing is the people we have in the town hall right now know how to write some grants, but not all of them. So we're getting some things done. I wrote a grant, applied for a grant today, and that was for the neglected cemetery grant. So I wrote that one myself and put it into the state grant. Some of them aren't that bad. They're fairly straightforward. Some, though, have to have a lot of detail and history behind what they are, and those are the tough ones. Probably not. Those who had heard of what we were trying to do in the town is continue to build the town up and do more things with it for the best bang for the buck, and I would say that would be Village of Warwick. Village of Warwick, I'm applying for sidewalks, and there's a 3-year, 3-phase sidewalk grant. It's a community grant that's available from the state of Connecticut. Each year it's valued at $600,000 for each year. The first phase of that would be to put a sidewalk in from where, just in front of where United Services is, up the hill to the school system, just past the second entrance, on the same side as the school. And there'll be crosswalks along the way on the top by those other three streets. That, and I can share this, I think I give it to you, did you already share it out with everybody, or not yet?
No, because I hadn't put it on the agenda. So
That's okay.
And the other thing I thought about too is I'm going to be tomorrow finalizing everything for the 23rd, the next meeting, and I think that's
That's a
probably
good place to talk about it. So I'll cut this short really by saying, our plans are to continue making more things for the town. And for that, I'm going to see if I can put in, it's a 3-year project. Years 2 and 3, I can put into the 5-year capital to make sure that those costs that are encumbered by the town, meaning the engineering costs, could actually go into the 5-year capital plan. For this year, I'm going to do everything I can to save money by going to freeze, not hiring, and not purchasing items. So if towards the end of the year we're good, I can use the majority of those monies to go towards the engineering costs. That's the intention. And so, again, on the 23rd, I'll give you more detail. I'll share with you all the plans. But that's the idea, is that whatever I'm coming up with, I'm trying to look at some background material to say, it shouldn't cost the taxpayers more money. It should, if anything, I'll try to do it for savings. If not, the little money that I've asked for from the general fund would be very little. So, but in years 2 and 3, though, it would be part of my budget, so it's coming right out there. You want to go through these? I gave all the other 2 pages? Okay. Well, I can't answer to all of the other, how far we are on collections. I think we're a little behind, only because we're in COVID-19, and we extended out the October 1st deadline date. So we are behind a little bit on the collections at this point.
Real quick on those collections, that collection rate, is that a percentage of the bills issued so far, or what the total bills issued for this year will be?
In other words, we put out July 1,
Right.
1 collection.
Just that collection, that's half of that collection. Okay, thank you.
I think the highlight next would be, it says other local revenue. So we did get some money back from Kermit as equity share, and there's another couple of payments, as you can see from Connecticut water payments, in lieu of doing over the roads that they had dug up because of their smaller areas in the town. So they dug up a road and they paved it over, and just patchwork, so to speak. But it's good enough for right now. We're doing those roads over the next 2 years anyway. So what I did was I said, well, we're going to need money in case the state doesn't give us enough. Anticipate that, so I took about $44,000 on one and $55,000 on another, put it in the general fund, whole thing. You can see the expenditures, line by line. It's not a lot. Each time that they do ask for an expenditure, it goes from me, and I approve it, or I don't.
On the local revenue again,
Yep.
take those 3 numbers and what you got, there's a difference of 12,053. Just curious.
Other local revenue.
Yeah, you have the 17,175 from Derma, then the 2 payments from the water company. Okay, that's 116, 175.
Yep.
Take that from the 228, 128, whatever it is. There's a difference of 12,053.
Where are you getting the 128 from? I just want to follow.
Well, it's on the report, 128, 228. On the actual, so in other words, you made 28,
I'm
you're
just
28 grand higher
on this.
on the revenue, local revenue, 105640.
Right at the bottom.
Yeah, there is a typo in there, so I want to make sure that that's corrected. Otherwise, we're way behind, right? So I've asked her to update that to me. It's the last line on that first page.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be fixed.
But money may have come in from last year and put in this year's budget. That's what that could be too.
Okay.
I don't know, but I know revenue comes
verify
in
with
after
Kelly.
the fact, so could be that too.
There's one other one, it's not just Kermit, there was one other one that they also paid us money back as well. CCM. I think CCM gave us a check for 10 or 12, I'll verify that. But I think they gave us money back too because we weren't using them and they weren't offering other services, so that's why they decided to do revenue share back to each town.
I mean, if we're gonna go over this monthly, it should be up to date, it shouldn't be nothing to question.
The other thing that I know Gary and I talked the other day that I'm going to bring up again, and I don't know how many times I've brought it up over the years to Board of Ed, but I still personally would like to see a regular expense report from them. And just seeing where the heck all the money's going, because while we have the bottom line, numbers that we're usually looking at, and again, there's always the opportunity to go to Board of Ed meetings, still, it shouldn't be out of the question to ask for all the Board of Finance members to get a breakdown from the Board of Ed on a month-to-month basis. But, I mean, from what I've heard, it's doable. I know I've talked to Ron about it before too. It's definitely not out of the question, but it just never comes to fruition. So I'm going to bring it up again.
So tonight after we get out of here, I'll go to my other meeting. I will send an email over to Ken and Ron and ask them the same question I'll add you one.
Okay. Kevin, I know, I think it was last night, the inland wetlands, we were talking about cell tower.
Yes.
So what was the change there, or what were you looking to get feedback on?
Basically, there's a cell tower on Green Hollow Road that the company could not renegotiate a contract with. So right around the corner from there, there is another entity that wants to, another family that's willing to negotiate with that. So it would be an upgraded tower, it would be a little taller, newer services. So it really falls with the siting council, we have no say in it. But they just wanted to make sure that we are aware of it, and we could hold a public meeting, public hearing, but really all it is a cell tower. We have no control over it. On page 2 of that grouping is basically just, again, they go through their licensing, what they have need for licensing for certain items. Same thing with town clerk. Police training, you know that there are other officers hired. Hope you all know that now. One officer has already been sworn in and is now going traveling back and forth to training. The governor of Connecticut decided that he would allow senior centers and rec departments to, or mostly senior centers, to reopen. There's a big problem with that in my mind because you're putting the most vulnerable, compromising situation back into a tough situation. We've already asked if if Ted was here, he told you, but we've already asked if veterans were even interested, and they said no. So at this time, we're planning it for whenever we finally get to that point, but it's all planned out. So we did have music in the park. We were able to definitely make it so that we can actually spread people out and have some recreation by way of music. So that worked out very well. Sick and vacation. Well, that was based on the union contract, because it was a payout, the first of the cycle of payouts for unused. Unemployment, you'll see the note there. So that will be something that we'll have to come back to later on. We'll also be looking at some different things for computers. We had a couple of break. happened to be at we could go to the highway department, pump gas. It also has a control mechanism, so it says who's using what by the way of code. Well, that broke down. He was able to fix it with a memory card for right now, but we're kind of touchy. There's also one at the police station that broke, and that's the one with the camera system. So replaceable, about $1,000 or so. So the next one up is Mark Brogy for DEP. They've been using money on contingency for that. That wasn't too bad. The herbicide was paid out. They've done the application, and I believe they've done the application. I'm going to verify that. And we had to pay $500 for the DEP permit fee. Didn't know about that. So we did pay out a little bit of money for our new tile website. That was actually from low-set money from last year. And this building repair number that you see here is going to be adjusted. Some of that money was actually from last year for the tempered glass. So it really should have applied to last year's numbers, and she's fixing that now.
The total that ended up going to that was a little over 11,000.
11.8.
Any of that reimbursable?
We're putting that in there for it. The problem with the state of Connecticut and FEMA is, I was on a conference call today with emergency management, and one of the CEOs said, well, you know, I put my paperwork in with the state of Connecticut, and they rejected it. And they said, well, you know, you're supposed to put it with FEMA first. Wait until FEMA goes all the way through their cycle, and approves or rejects, and then put that paperwork into the state. So it's really bogging down, and I do mean it's bogging down because we told everybody this ahead of time. If a highway truck went out to take care of something that happened, let's say with the storm, and they were on a weekend, they were cleaning up things from the storm, they would put their overtime in for that. They had to say which truck they used, how many hours they used it, what streets they went on, and what people were in the truck. That had to be in the report. If it wasn't in the report, it got rejected. So they're very, very, very into the minutia of making sure that they're paying you out for exactly what they do. So that's the problem. So far, we have to wait to make sure that we come back to FEMA. A lot of people are still waiting.
We'll, of course, bring that up next week, 23rd, regarding for that.
You're all set with me, I better jump to another one.
Thank you.
Okay?
Any other questions or comments regarding the budget statement? No? Okay. Moving on to citizens' participation. Joe?
Hi. How much time do they have to look this over before the meeting? Did they just get it?
They did as far as the report, because it just got out in the past 24 hours. The report we're referencing is Kelly's remarks. The budget statement.
Yeah,
they have
because I
that.
know Kelly's not here. There's a lot of things in there. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and the truth
I mean,
is
there's not a lot
that
of
summary
questions.
report, I mean, it was certainly a courtesy of her. I mean, that's not one that she usually produces.
Yeah.
So there wasn't an exact plan on that, but she does know from feedback that I know I've given her in the past is that we can't be doing the actual budget statement. We can't be doing that, obviously, the day of, or the day
Yeah.
before. We need time to look through that. But
Yeah, there's a lot in that.
yeah, the members did get that.
I just saw it like earlier.
Mhm.
I just wanted to-
Those have been distributed about a week or so in advance of the meeting, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good, because, it's hard to.
Yeah, because there were some times in the past where the members were getting it like literally the night of or the day before or something like that, or just cutting it way too close.
Oh, yeah.
Need time to look through.
Sure.
All right. If there's no other citizen participation, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, motion and second, discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.